So you want me to look right at you for my answer?
Yes, sir. And I'm
That's
gonna
perfect,
I'm gonna
yeah.
get as close to this as I can as soon as he.
You can move over a little
Yep.
bit more.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Am I out?
Yes, you're up.
If I do this, am I out?
Okay. Yes, you're fine. All right. Sounds on?
Sounds on.
Okay, action.
Rolling.
Please tell us your name.
I'm Nicholas Snow, spelled Nicholas, SNOW.
And what is your relationship with Desert AIDS Project?
I've been a grateful client of Desert AIDS Project for about 6.5 years.
How did you come to be a client of Desert AIDS Project?
My first engagement with Desert AIDS Project was as a journalist in the early 2000s. And I was living outside of the country, and through a human error, I became HIV positive. I did not have health insurance, and I returned to Palm Springs specifically to become a client of Desert AIDS Project because I had fallen out of healthcare. I didn't have insurance, I didn't have the money to pay. I was at a point in the progression of my HIV where it was time for me to start medication.
How did you learn about Desert AIDS Project?
Desert AIDS Project is one of the preeminent organizations in the greater Palm Springs area, and it's actually celebrated worldwide. The leadership of Desert AIDS Project has been invited at least on 2 occasions to the White House in recent years. So because of this great visibility, I knew of the agency, and because of my long-term sort of journalism/activism, I had reported about the agency multiple times before I ever needed to become a client.
Tell me about your experience the first day you walked into Desert AIDS as the first time you came in as a patient. What was that like? Were you received well?
I've never been anything but well received at Desert AIDS Project, and the first day that I came here to become a patient was after a few months of communicating with people I knew here via email. And there was a combination of anxiety and relief. The anxiety was about the fact that it would take some time to become an official client and to be able to access care. And the relief was because I knew that I was on target to become a client here. And because I have experience with other similar organizations outside the country, I have a unique appreciation for how stellar this agency is and how much...
Excuse me, Cindy? Can I have a drink of your water? Yeah, go ahead. Something just flew in my throat, sorry. That was really good, by the way.
Thank you, I can start that.
Wherever you think you left off, we can capture it maybe later.
I know how to do that. Yeah.
But it was also what you said
Thank
was
you.
really good.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sorry.
Because I've experienced HIV/AIDS service organizations outside the country, not necessarily as a client, but as a journalist, I have a very strong awareness of how preeminent this agency is and exactly why Desert AIDS Project is a leader in its field.
Would you recommend others to come to Desert AIDS Project for services and for care?
I've recommended many of my friends and loved ones to access services here. People that I know who are living with HIV, who have relocated to the area and needed to access care, they've come here. And people that I meet in the community that may not necessarily know their HIV status, I've encouraged them to come here for free anonymous testing. So yes, I love being a cheerleader for Desert AIDS Project.
Besides HIV care, they also provide Hepatitis C Center of Excellence. They provide behavioral health. They do primary care for people who aren't necessarily HIV positive. Can you talk about that a little bit? Are you aware of that? Or
when I first started to come to Desert AIDS Project, the bulk of the patient population were people like me living with HIV. But since Desert AIDS Project has become a federally qualified healthcare provider, many other people have the ability to come here and choose their care. And I believe now that more than 50% of the patient population are people that are not living with HIV. I particularly love this because I love being part of an even more diverse community, because the clients of Desert AIDS Project, the staff, the volunteers, the donors, the broader community, we are just that, a community. And I celebrate diversity, and I also love it that other people that aren't struggling with HIV but have other basic health care needs get to benefit from Desert AIDS Project.
Is there any individual or group of individuals you would like to thank at Desert AIDS Project, and why?
Well, I celebrate Desert AIDS Project every day, and I particularly want to thank the staff, the volunteers, the donors, the board of directors, but also the broader Palm Springs community, because really what Desert AIDS Project has that perhaps no other HIV/AIDS service organization does have is the community in which it is based. There's nothing like Palm Springs. They say it's Palm Springs like nowhere else. So it goes on to make sense that Desert AIDS Project would be like no place else.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the unique housing program Desert AIDS Project has, and what is the name of the complex?
Okay. Upon becoming a client of Desert AIDS Project, I was able to get onto the waiting list of Vista Sunrise Apartments, which is an 80-unit complex located on the Desert AIDS Project campus. It took me 5 months to get into a studio apartment, and after 3.5 years on the waiting list, I have been in a 1-bedroom apartment now for quite a few years. I love the complex because it's a green building. It's built with double pane glass and other green considerations. We have solar energy, so the covered parking is filled with solar panels. So the most my electric bill is in the hottest month is like $30. It's a hop, skip, and a jump over here to see my particular, whatever my appointment is for that day. And more importantly, it's affordable to me, and it allowed me to get back on my feet, and I'm in such a stronger place across the board 6 years later than I was when I moved in. And once again, Desert AIDS Project is demonstrating that it's ahead of the pack, and they're expanding the campus dramatically, and as part of those plans is another low-income housing unit.
What are some of the unique challenges you think patients face in getting specialty care access in this area down here in the Coachella Valley?
A lot of people who need health care know it intuitively, but they're just afraid. So that is why I go public with my HIV status. I talk about how I'm living powerfully with HIV. I do what I can to communicate to others that if you know your HIV status and it happens to be positive and you access appropriate medical care, you can live a long and healthy life. And there's also a lot of stigma still against those of us who are living with HIV and AIDS, and I know that every time I just show up in the world being my fabulous loving self, that helps fight that stigma.
Can you talk about the importance of patients being able to receive high quality health care, behavioral health, social services close to their home?
Desert AIDS Project has so many different programs, and for those that don't happen to be right next to the agency, they offer gasoline reimbursement and bus passes and other sorts of support. For some of the services, their satellite offices. For me, I am able to walk across the parking lot, and for a significant amount of time here as a client, I didn't own a car. I have at Desert AIDS Project at times accessed wonderful mental health services through support groups and through one-on-one counseling. I've been able to take advantage of the food bank. I have, of course, gone to a nutritionist. I'm able to, of course, go to the primary care clinic, and I'm sure there's a multitude of services that I've accessed that I haven't used. I'm happy that I have a car now, but it's very helpful to have been able to get here by just walking across the parking lot.
What would you consider Desert AIDS Project's greatest strength or greatest value in the community?
The greatest strength of Desert AIDS Project is the community in which it is based. Hands down. Desert AIDS Project would not be where it is today without this fabulous, loving, supportive, diverse, philanthropic community of the greater Palm Springs area. And that speaks to the people that work here and that volunteer here and that give money to the agency. We are all part of this community, and we come together in so many different ways. And I would have to say one of the things I celebrate about the greater Palm Springs area is that around critical services and caring for humanity, people put their individual and political differences aside and celebrate the progress and the support that we can offer.
Tell us a little bit about Nicholas, who you are, what you do outside of your HIV status and being a patient. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? What makes you happy? What are your hobbies?
Well, for decades I've referred to myself as a multimedia entertainment activist. My personal mission statement is to honor and express my creativity in a way that makes a difference. I have a very popular online television show evolving into a network called Promo Homo TV. For the last year I've had over 260,000 views of programming, and my fundamental editorial focus is connecting the circuitry of humanity. So I'm all about giving back, I'm all about making a difference, but more importantly, I'm about honoring myself and who I am and expressing that into the world, having overcome a lot of the barriers that told me that I was unworthy and that I should not even be around.
So community health centers play a vital role, and they have for you in your growth here with Desert AIDS Project. What do you think, or explain to me a little bit about the value of community health centers as a whole, not just Desert AIDS Project, but the value of community health centers, being in a community and being vested with that community to provide services?
My experience of community health centers is that they are empowering the underserved and the forgotten in many ways. And it is the communities themselves that have created these health centers. So it's communities helping communities. And ultimately, charity begins at home. And we do need to take care of our friends and our neighbors. So there is really nothing more important than a community health center. Desert AIDS Project not only empowers its clients as a community health center, it makes significant contributions to all sorts of nonprofit organizations throughout the community that are sort of like sisters in the fight, so to speak. So there are many newer organizations that benefit from the strength and the resources of Desert AIDS Project, which makes it a community health center in a completely different way.
Tell us a little bit about the sisters. Tell us a little bit about the collaboration. What type of organizations does Desert AIDS Project collaborate with?
Excuse me.
My
Your
microphone
microphone,
just
I
fell
think,
off.
just fell, because I noticed that the
Oh.
sound.
What do I need to repeat?
No, you just have to throw that question back.
Okay.
Everything else is fine.
Okay,
That's
it
when I
just
just
came
noticed
out.
that, yes, I heard it kind of snap.
Okay.
Everything is so good. You can have a whole movie just.
Are we?
I was gonna
We're
say
still
after
live.
editing. Okay.
Yeah,
All
just
right.
keep
So.
going.
I was asking about the sisterness, the collaboration.
Right,
What collaborations does Desert AIDS Project have?
I mentioned that community health centers are often serving people that are forgotten and underserved. And one of the things that I celebrate about the greater Palm Springs area is it has become, through the hard work of many, a friendly place for the transgender community. And there are agencies that are not-for-profit that particularly are of service to the transgender community, often and rightfully run by trans people themselves. And Desert AIDS Project has been a leader in helping to empower their events through financial resources, through sharing of other resources, and through a variety of ways. They're also Desert AIDS Project also supports Greater Palm Springs Pride, and of course they affiliated with over 80 local organizations to create the Get Tested Coachella Valley campaign, which went on for 3 years as an independent project and now is one of the outreach programs of the agency itself. And that is what got the attention of the White House under Barack Obama, whereby our CEO, David Brinkman, was invited to the White House twice to speak about the cutting-edge work of Desert AIDS Project. So Desert AIDS Project supports me, this community, the broader organizations within this community, and basically through its cutting-edge work in the fight against HIV/AIDS, communities all over the world.
So speak from your heart about your passion. Something I haven't asked you that you'd like to tell us in closing. Tell us maybe something that you really wanted to say today, or you wanted to get across about the work of the Community Health Center, the collaboration, the specialty services. You've covered a lot. Is there anything that we've missed that you would really like to share with us today?
One of the great events that happens every year in our community to support Desert AIDS Project is Dining Out for Life. Once a year, generally in late April, this year over 80 restaurants, about 80 restaurants participated. They give a percentage of their proceeds to Desert AIDS Project from that day. And on that day, someone asked me why I participated, and I said, I'm dining out for my life. And when I'm an activist, I'm fighting for my life. And when I was an activist in the 80s in the fight against HIV/AIDS, I didn't know at one point I would become HIV positive and need the services. But the fact that I was on the front lines of that activism helped bring about the drugs that were available to me when I needed them to stay alive. So fundamentally, I want to say to people, trust yourself, honor yourself, express yourself, and live the life that only you can choose to lead, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't.
I'm good.
Brilliant.
I'm good.
I love it.
That was
Okay,
fantastic.
let's do a room tone.